Thomas Hezekiah Mix was born in Mix Run, Pennsylvania on January 6, 1880. His father, Edwin, was a stable master for a wealthy lumber merchant, and he passed his love and care for horses down to Tom. When the Spanish-American War broke out in 1898, Mix joined the Army, but his unit was never shipped overseas. Tom left the Army a few years later and married Grace Allen. Over the next 7 years, he took various odd jobs and was divorced and remarried 2 times, first to Kitty Jewel Perrine and then to Olive Stokes, with whom he had his first child, Ruth Mix. He finally found more permanent employment at the Miller Brothers 101 Ranch, where he would eventually become a skilled horseman, roper, and trick shooter. Mix became a star in the Wild West show circuit, a business he would promote until his death. In 1909, he was discovered by the Selig Polyscope Company, for whom he would star in hundreds of movies. In 1917, Mix again divorced his wife and married actress Victoria Ford, who he had met on the set of one of his movies. That same year, both he and Victoria signed a contract with the Fox Film Corporation, which offered him a higher salary and a chance at greater fame. Tom's salary at Fox would eventually reach $17,500 a week. A year after he signed on with Fox, Tom obtained Tony, his famous horse. Earlier that year, his first horse, Old Blue, had died, and, after trying out several replacements, Mix finally cast Tony when his trainer spotted the horse pulling a chicken wagon down Glendale Avenue. Distinguished by the 2 white socks on his back legs and the diamond-shaped blaze running from his forehead to his nostrils, Tony was the first real movie wonder horse, and, like William S. Hart's Fritz, was given equal billing with his human co-star. At one point, Tony would get almost as much fan mail as Mix himself. When Mix placed his handprints in the concrete outside Grauman's Chinese Theater in 1927, Tony's hoofprints were placed alongside them. By the mid-1920s, Mix was one of the biggest names in Hollywood, and had surpassed William Hart as the preeminent Western movie star. During his tenure at Fox, Mix would keep the studio solvent. Contributing to Mix's stardom were the myths that the studios intentionally perpetuated about him. In the public eye, Mix was a war hero, who fought in the Spanish-American War, the Boxer Rebellion in China, and even the Boer War in Africa, before becoming a famous lawman. Though, in truth, Mix's brief career in law enforcement was unremarkable. The actor was a personal friend of the legendary Wyatt Earp, and was a pallbearer at his funeral in 1929. In 1928, Mix left Fox for the Film Booking Office, or FBO, Corporation, where he made $7,500 a week. After this, Tom left Hollywood for a time, and went back to his roots as a live performer for the Sells Floto Circus. Tom and Tony would stay with Sells Floto for 3 seasons, between 1929 and 1931, making about $10,000 a week. This was a difficult period for Mix, who was suffering from injuries sustained while shooting one of his movies for FBO, and also going through a variety of lawsuits on top of his daughter Ruth's divorce. In 1932, Universal, having lost some of their biggest stars, decided to coax Tom Mix out of retirement. Offering him a salary of $100,000 per film, they persuaded him to come back to the movie industry, and he and his new horse, Tony Jr., would star in 10 talking pictures for them over the next few years. After being injured on the set of The Fourth Horseman in 1932, Tony retired from the film industry at the age of 22. He was replaced with a similar-looking horse, Tony Jr., in the films, while Tony II would double for him in public appearances. Mix himself was injured while shooting at Rustler's Roundup, the last of his pictures for Universal, and retired from Hollywood once again. That same year, he was married for the last time, to his 5th wife, Mabel Hubbell Ward. After this, he and Mabel went back on the road with a new Wild West show called the Tom Mix Roundup. This was short-lived, as Tom soon after joined the Sam B. Dell Circus, which Mix took over after the owner's death, rebuilding it into a Wild West extravaganza. This was the largest Wild West show on the road at the time, but Tom's circus, like many others, faced financial difficulties because of the Depression. Nevertheless, Tom made a success of it for 2 years, before closing down in 1938. After this, Mix went on a short tour with the circus in Europe.
Mix. Remember his exploits with Tony in the days of the silent film? Tom lands in Old England again, this time with Tony II. Tony, he says, can do everything except talk or fly.
When he returned to the States, he began doing short acts in vaudeville, which he would continue for the next few years. On October 12, 1940, Mix was killed in a car accident in Tucson, Arizona. Tom was 60. The stone memorial, which marks the site of his death, bears the inscription, "In memory of Tom Mix, whose spirit left his body on this spot, and whose characterization and portrayals in life served to better fix memories of the Old West in the minds of living men."